Hey everybody, my name is Dr. Christopher Hart, and I am a dentist in Mitchell, South Dakota at Hart Dental and Hart Dental Sleep Solutions. And today I have with me author and a friend of mine, Melissa Sue Methven, and she is sharing with us today a few things about her book, and it is The Truth Behind the Smiles, and it is a very touching and heartwarming book about her journey with mental health, and specifically talking about her husband, Dr. Scott Methven, a friend of mine also and a fellow colleague, who committed suicide a few years ago. And she's going to share with us today about her journey through this and her journey towards healing. And I just want to say thank you, Melissa, for coming and joining us
Oh,
today.
it's such an honor that you asked me for this interview because I do feel it's so important to share my story. I've seen it have such an impact already, and so I thank you for taking the time.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Well, let's jump right in. I'm really excited to talk about your book. I just found that I just consumed it. I wrote so many notes. And thankfully, we won't be answering all the questions that came to mind tonight, but there's some really important ones, and some of them a little bit heavy. But one of the things I loved about your book is you started with hope. I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but you started with hope. So I want to say thank you for that because it really feels, as I was reading it, like it was divinely inspired.
No, yes.
You are obviously addressing some very difficult subjects: depression, suppression, suicide. Um, but and it's important to recognize those things and so that we can deal with them. But that's not the goal, to stay there. We want to work through that. We want to get towards healing. So, and I think one of the things that seems to have carried you through that was hope. So I'm so glad you started with that because immediately I was just very encouraged. And I think it really set the stage for the whole book. So thank you
Good.
for that. So
Good. I'm glad. It was, yes, that's, my whole thing. That definitely, I love that you said that, that's how you read it, because that's what I was hoping that it would give people.
so in addition to hope, what are some of the things that inspired you for this book?
Oh, wow. That inspired me. It was, like you said, very much divine. It was a divine calling to use my voice and address suicide awareness. My children inspired me because I saw their pain and their confusion. And I also wanted learn all the tools so that
Mm,
this does not happen for my children. That was my biggest, still to this day, my biggest fear. I don't sit in that. I have hope, and that's why I'm doing all the work. And ultimately, I wanted to write this book so they can read it, and remember that there's always hope, and there's a lot of resources out there, and that their dad loved them, to just kind of understand the depth of where he was at.
yeah,
Mm.
I
And
think it would be easy to, obviously, I'm sure there was a moment in this journey where it was overwhelming quite
Mhm.
often. Uh, but I love your intentionality as a father of five myself. We want nothing more than the best for our kids, but it really took a lot of, wasn't just a choice, it took a lot of choices for you. And
Mm.
so I loved reading about that. I loved seeing a mother's love through that. So it was just
Yes,
beautiful.
yes. Well, yeah, I mean, just days after my husband died by suicide, my son was in, and daughter was so much pain, but I remember her vividly. He looked at me in the eyes and he said, "Mom, dad was so sad, so he died. He hurt himself, and now I'm so sad. I want to die." That was a sharp pain in my heart. That was a big realization that and big drive to do a lot of healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What what were some of the things that maybe surprised you in the journey? So at the point you decided to write the book,
Mhm.
obviously you had motivation and inspiration from the point you decided through the process of writing the end. What were maybe some of the things that surprised you about the journey and writing? What are some of the things that
Writing, I realized that writing was all part of my healing.
Mm,
It was also to release it all. So now I'm telling everybody to write. I'm telling everybody, even to, if, I was not a writer. I was not an author. I only started journaling in writing after my husband's death. This is not something I was always doing. And I now tell people they need to write, just write it out, because then that's another way to release it. So I was surprised how much healing that involved to just share my whole truth. As scary as that was, this was also another step of my healing and my children, because they see the impact it's having others, and being of service is so, so very much healing. We volunteer often as a family and we give back because that brings us joy too, you know?
yeah.
Mhm.
Let's talk about Scott for a moment.
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
this part, sorry, apologize.
No, no
I
need
get a
to
little
say
tough.
sorry. Yes.
Um, so little background. I met Scott in 2000, I think it was 17. Scott and I joined the board of directors for the American Academy of Clear Aligners. We joined together, and I still remember being in the room with him, with some of the other new board members, and this you're gonna smile at this because you know this will be familiar, but he's a big guy. He's a tall, dark, handsome guy, and
Yes.
he can have a bit of an intimidating presence,
Mhm.
but the moment you meet him, that just kind of melts away. He
No,
immediately kind of pulls you into his presence. And I don't know what it is. There's just a softness
mhm.
about him where you immediately feel, okay, I can relax.
Yeah.
He is your quintessential big teddy bear.
Yes, it's so
Yeah.
true. I actually, everybody thought they were his best friend. Everybody, we would meet and we'd go be out, when we live in Wasilla, everybody. And even after his death, I was Scott's best friend. I'm Scott's best, because he just made people feel that good and connected, with everyone. And he loved people. Actually, that's one thing I loved about him when we travel. We love to travel a lot. We love music as well. We had a lot of things in common, and we love to get to meet new people and chat. And he could talk about any subject. I mean, he could retain everything. He had every fact, random facts, and lots of great sense of humor. And like you said, he had quite the presence. I love that about him, 6'5" and handsome. And I know I could see him in any room, I'm like, oh, where's my husband? There he is. And
Yes.
definitely there was the safety to be around him, and I think that's what I miss the most is his big hugs. Actually, that's what we talk about with the kids too, you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about Scott professionally as we're reflecting on some of these memories. As a dentist, what can you tell me about him?
Oh, wow. Yes. Me being a dental hygienist and working at the same office for many years, I was always so proud. He was a perfectionist. He was an excellent dentist, excellent, like with precision. He could connect with patients, and so many that had the fear, he could take that away. People would come in, drive 3, 4 hours to come and see him in Wasilla, Alaska. People that come just visit once in a while. He was excellent. Even business wise, he had it all. He can really, he was great. Root canals too. He was not an endodontist, but he was really good at them, which was really strange to me because he was so big, big hands, but could really work minute details. He was very detail oriented. So, I mean, I think that's why our staff, had stayed with us for 15 years, because they like, his work was like no anybody else. And yeah, he was excellent and a perfectionist, and he loved dentistry. He really did. He really did. I think once it got hard, I think it's just I truly feel it's when you give and give and give so much, which he did, and then some people, then it's never enough, right? and they're still mad at you and they're still this, and that just takes a toll on him because he would give so much more than anyone I know. And I think the management does get really stressful, the insurance and financial stress. There's just this heaviness, the debt and owning, and I think that took a toll on him. And as much as he liked doing dentistry, he didn't like the rest of it. He kept on saying, I just want to focus on doing what I love, you know, but not everything else. He did have associates for a long while. But of course, like I mentioned in my book, my husband did go through a lawsuit for 6 years, and that really took a toll on him. That was very heavy, and that was very discouraging because now his whole time was also dealing with that, and that was so negative. And yeah, it was a battle for 6 years, which I know many dentists deal um, with lawsuits. There's quite a few that do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing that. I really enjoy one of the things I was really looking forward to this interview is um, letting other dentists and other colleagues kind of reflect on what they knew about Scott, because these are all kind of shared experiences that we had with him. You said he loved root canals. He was very present in the endo chat room. In fact, just last night I was looking up texts back and forth with he and I because he was a whiz. And one of the reasons why he was a whiz at root canals is because he loved to help get people out of pain.
Mhm.
And he took on a lot of emergencies. And some of those people needed same day root canals, and so he got really good at them. And he was good. He did beautiful root canals. So, and as a result, he taught a lot of people a lot of things. And it was in chat rooms. There was like people were begging, teach us, put on a class, take my money,
Yes,
you
he
know.
had talked about that. He had that dream of like, okay, maybe, become an associate, sell the practice, and teach, or just teach endo. He had it. That was a dream of his. Yes. Yeah.
um, Take me back if you would. So he's doing dentistry. He's doing a lot of great things. The heaviness that you talked about, the burdens, um, are starting to pile up at some point. At what point did you start to get concerned? Uh, what were you seeing in Scott that
Yeah.
made you
Well,
concerned?
when I look back, there was a lot of red flags early on, even after just 3 years of owning the practice, that heaviness of the student loans that are $500,000. Then we opened up a practice that took out a big loan. Um, he was working 6 days a week. So the back pain kind of showed up then. And I do remember the pain medications show up then, to keep going. And he had a good handle on it there, but as it progresses, you need more, a little bit more, because that pain never goes away because you never stop working those 5 days a week. Or Scott was so good at taking care of everybody else, but unfortunately, he didn't take care of himself, right? And which we're all guilty of that, right? Even when we have children and whatnot, it's just everybody else. And then we kind of forget ourselves especially he was trying to build up his practice. And so that was his main focus. He gave a lot of himself, but he kind of forgot to kind of give back to him, because I think as dentists, you'll often, you'll hear negativity as you're going in. Well, he would take that on, that fear. It's almost like an energy exchange of some sort. He's like, let me take that fear for you. But then he had never had a way to release that, right? And so I would see it progressing as the years got harder on his body. Then the pain medication, he got a bit more of pain medication coming in, and there was more heavy drinking on the weekends just to kind of numb from the week, because the week was so stressful I'm gonna numb out on the weekends, and he was very good for a long time of not drinking during the week while he worked, and it was just the heavy drinking on the weekends. So those were kind of the red flags. It was, it wasn't always like that. Yeah, there was a time where he did take a break from uh, drinking and doing some PT, and that was really good. He had started swimming, and I was seeing a change. He really got into jujitsu, but then he got off of that, off track, and I think yeah, it just didn't take enough time to take care of himself.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'll be honest, in talking about Scott, it's hard to even say the word suicide.
Mm.
Um, but in chapter 11, you made a kind of a profound statement, I thought, and you said, I will never ignore the fact that Scott died by suicide. I will not silence it. I will not soften it or hide it. So in honor of your mission, for mental health awareness and especially suicide prevention, I don't want to soften it in this conversation either. So um, it's clear, very clear in the book that you did everything you possibly could to help Scott. Um, did you, even in those dark moments, did you ever consider that he might be considering suicide or having any suicide ideation?
You know, I had asked him a year prior because he had just received news that his dad was terminally ill, and he was really close to his dad. He was still in the lawsuit, had been 5 years at the time. So it was a lot. So I said, "Do you have, suicidal thoughts?" And he said, "No, I'm just really stressed. My dad, I'm just really sad." And he would never say that he is depressed. Even when he's talking about the medications he's taking, he would say, "Oh, it's some of them could be for depression, but it's for my nerve damage and this and that." So he wasn't willing to see the impact that it was having on himself. He didn't want to believe that there was depression. And no, I did not. I mean, it was a big shock. I'm sure it was a shock to all his friends, everyone, but it was equally a shock to me because even I talk in my book the day before, there was so much hope. We
Yeah.
actually had the most beautiful day.
Yeah.
I had so much hope. I literally, we held hands, and he said, when we go home, let's read some books and let's like reconnect, let's figure things out. Like I was like, okay. I mean, I knew it was more than just marriage, counseling at the time. I kept on saying, you need to go to he never liked calling it rehab, but I said, just like a mental break, like there's retreats, there's healing with other doctors. I had found a place in California with like 6 doctors, and I said, maybe this is just good for you to just go there, retreat, and have some space for yourself and heal and process everything that's going on. So no, I did not. It was a shock. It was definitely not. Scott always hit it so well. I think a lot of men do. He was like Superman. I have a picture of him when we're first dating, and I think our first Halloween, he is dressed as Superman, and that's exactly how he portrayed. Every time I would check in on him and get worried, he'd give me enough to
Mm.
be like, okay, he's got it together. Because I was concerned. I'd see all the pharmaceuticals, and I know what these are, but I also see patients in their list, of pharmaceuticals. So you do have an understanding of people living with chronic pain. Um, but he'd always be like, he's got a handle on it. But deep down, I didn't see the immense pain he was in to actually think, because obviously he had been thinking about it for a really long time, you
Yeah.
know, just the way he did it and the way it happened. There was some thought, and I was so upset about that he didn't see it. He hit it so well, and that's why it was so strong in me to use my voice about this, is about suicide, because it's not always. Scott was going to work 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Scott was laughing, smiling, yes, he'd have these downs, but we're like, oh, the lawsuit. His dad is passing. Of course, he's going to have these downs. But never did I think he would die by suicide. And
Yeah.
that's why I want to bring awareness and a lot of men to be able to speak and feel safe to do so. It's not a weakness, it's
Yeah.
not a weakness. And you don't have to be Superman for a family. I kept asking Scott, I'd rather have my husband back and sell everything, sell the house, sell the practice. Let's move. I think we need more sunshine. We need, like, we were in Alaska and he had talked about Texas, and I said, let's do that. I'd rather have you back than, everything else. But I think for a lot of people, those things like the car, the house, the office, that's their worthiness, right? They've put so much into that worth, their identity,
Yeah.
that is really hard for him to lose,
Yeah.
because he'd get really upset when I'd say, let's sell the house, let's do this. Because for me, that material thing didn't matter, because I wanted him back, you know? I
Yeah.
wanted him back, and my kids wanted their dad, you know? Sorry, I went off
Hey, this is
but
great.
I'm so this is yeah, so passionate.
Yeah, no, I love it. Thank you. After Scott was gone, um, obviously you were in survival mode.
Mhm.
You had a practice to deal with. I have no idea how I don't know what I would do without my wife and all my team. And here you're thrown into this in the midst of a tragedy. You have two children to care for. Um, what kept what kept you going during those initial days, and
Oh, yeah,
what kept you moving forward?
kept me moving forward. Wow. uh, Gosh, it was stronger than me. I look back to those months, those probably first 8 months, and God gave me that strength, and there's
Mm,
nothing else. And you mentioned my faith growing. I mean, I always believed in God. Oh, my faith grew because there's no way I'd wake up every day without his strength and his guidance. And the more and community, my our community, I mean, it just reflected how impactful Scott was in the community too, because everyone came to us, and that gave us hope. The love that we received from community. I mean, even all the dentists that came and found chefs for us and delivered food. Like, you don't know how important that was. I didn't have to worry about it. There was the cleaning service,
yep.
food delivered at our house. We had our driveway was really long. Nobody would ever come to our home because it was such a long driveway at the end of a cul-de-sac, but there was a cooler at the end, and people would deliver food in there. And all the wonderful, ACA group had found a chef to deliver meals, and that kept me going. That kept me going. That kept my kids going, having that community. And every day I had to just really task along, and of course my kids kept me going. I kept on thinking, I can't fall too. I see
Yeah.
the immense amount of pain that they're in. And I knew myself, I was never a big drinker, but I knew I couldn't touch that. I couldn't touch alcohol, because I need to be very clear. And I had to make a lot of clear decisions. I mean, we were in a lawsuit. The office was under bankruptcy, so I had to go now to court. I had to go to judges. I had to make all these final decisions and now do payroll. I mean, and Scott had no will, had nothing. So there was a lot of things that I had to for the probate that I had to do very quickly and clear-minded. So alcohol had to be out. And I actually did a lot of breath work, and praying, and just moved every day. I had a list, or else it was too overwhelming, because I had some friends and community that would come. We had a board, and they'd help me sort things out. But my faith, my community, and be willing to accept help. I really had to, I was hyper independent, living with a husband that had mental health issues, and I suppressed so much. I became hyper independent, and asking for help was really hard. So I did. I started asking for help, and that gave me the courage, the strength to go keep going every day, and trusting. There was just I was guided, along the way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's continue
Mm-hmm.
on that path. Let's talk about this your journey towards healing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at some point, you had to make a choice. Um, simply just survive and just let the days pass, or you needed to be very active in pursuing physical and mental and spiritual health.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it sounds like that decision led to an incredible amount of self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
learning about yourself, growth. And in your healing journey, you talk about you mentioned it just now, but you talk not just about depression, but also suppression. Uh, can you explain more of what suppression is, how you recognized it in your life, and why it can be so harmful?
Good question. Well, suppression, actually, it showed up. I noticed it showing up as a young girl. So, as I did some therapy, I did some inner child work and parts work. And you really kind of go back as to, oh, why did I not use my voice as much? Why the hide behind the smile? Why was it so hard? And so that was the suppression. As a young girl, I was taught, don't cry, hide your emotions. So I was still to this day, that's not something I do on an easy whim, but uh, so I started at a young age just hiding my emotions behind a smile just to please everyone, to make sure that everybody's doing okay. So I saw that showing up in my marriage. And Scott also, he suppressed so much. So I started looking back. When I met him, he had not spoken to his mom for, I think that was 10 years or maybe 5 years. And so that suppression of that pain, or that what he had his childhood, he had suppressed that. And how it showed up is that he would drink to numb it, but there was some anger. So I started seeing how we both suppressed so much and how it showed up into our lives. I started noticing the more I didn't speak and the more I felt resentment towards Scott because he wasn't going to go get help, or yet I felt so much resentment and anger, but I kept it inside. And how it showed up for me was chronic illness. So I started having adrenal fatigue, pretty much. At first, they didn't know what it was. I kept on going to all these doctors, and they weren't quite sure what it was, but it was stress. It was stress and the suppression was starting to affect all my adrenals. So I was extremely tired, even though I slept 8 hours. I started losing my hair. Then I started having gut issues to the point that I can only eat bone broth. I had lost a lot of weight, and it was all that stress. I just was contained in my body. Whereas my husband, his suppression came in with more alcohol. It became an everyday thing, more opioids and pain meds. And so that's why I'm now my book wanting to nudge to live your truth and not suppress those emotions because they're stored in you. As much as you want to avoid it, you say, well, if I don't talk about it, it's gone. No, it's stored inside of you, and it's affecting your nervous system. It's affecting all the cells of you, and that's how you get some with Hashimoto's. Like I love Dr. Gabor Mate. A lot of his books talk about suppression and expression, and if that's stored and what it does to all your cells and the sicknesses that it brings on, and even with predisposed genetic factors for mental health, you know. So more that you live your truth, the healthier that you'll be, right? You're not going to be keeping that. And that's why I dove into breath work, because breath work allowed me to express any stored emotions. That's where I'd feel safe to cry. I have people where they release anger there. It's a safe place to release anger. There's multitude of ways to express, emotions through therapy, breath work, being out in nature, meditation. Uh, those are journaling, writing is a way to release it, but you got to put it out there and not keep it in. And so that's kind of why I address suppression
Yeah.
and being honest with yourself. For a really long time, I didn't want to see my truth. It was too scary. It really was bad after I had Sophia. I mean, Scott threw his back out for a whole month and he was getting prescriptions from two doctors. So I had a 2-week-old baby and he was in his room laid up. And I remember calling one doctor and say, you need to stop prescribing him. He's getting it from somebody else. And he thought he'd lose everything, the office. And so I feel his back pain also got worse the more he suppressed. More it'll show up in your body. Your body will start to speak for you. I even after all the hormone issues and the gut issues, then I still wasn't speaking. Then I got a cyst in my vocal cord. I mean, then I heard God. I said, okay, I hear you. You're telling me to use my voice. Because even the ENT that I found said, wow, only motivational speakers, singers get this, and I was dental hygienist and it was very rare. And so that I started going, okay, I need to start speaking more. And I was trying to, talk to Scott's dad and his mom and relatives and people the closest to us, but uh, yeah, so that's why you have to be living your truth, and talk to somebody and seek some help.
Um, I have a quote from him later, but you bring to mind Dr. John Townsend has talks about character and character structure, and in that character structure is in the concept of integration, accepting the good and the bad. And I think what you're talking about when you say speaking your truth, that's accept that there's a level of acceptance there of what has happened, to not
Mhm.
bury it, to not suppress it, but to accept it. Doesn't mean you have to stay there. It doesn't have to define you. Um, but it's coming face to face with that. And when you do that, there's freedom. And
Mhm.
I love that. So
Yes.
I love that concept. I was not that familiar with suppression, but I think it ties into a lot of good habits of good mental health. And you actually answer my next question. I think people, when they become aware of maybe whether it's childhood trauma, an event in their life, uh, what have you, there's always this pull back to it a little bit. And so it
Mhm.
really takes maintenance. And you said journaling,
Mhm.
breath work, physical health, maybe it's nutrition, and then we're going to talk some more about that in a little bit. But I love those practices. Anything else that you really like or recommend for people who are feeling that pull back to the
Yes.
lie? And
Yes.
is
So it
that's
doesn't
not who they are.
stay in you. So it doesn't sit in you because you don't want it to keep showing up. You got to process it, acknowledge it, but then let it go. And, inner child work has done that, EMDR, parts
Mm,
work, breath work. I mean, I had PTSD from that day, and I would go to the grocery store, I'd be at work, I'd be, at the gym, and it would show up. And I had to leave. I just would break down and I'd have to leave, retreat. And until I did a breath work session and that vision it's like it came to me here, right? He's like, okay, you can see it, but now give it away. It's like God, give it to
mm,
God, let it go, right? God wants us to give it to him. And that's what happened. And since then, I never had it bother me. So it's worth doing the work. And I still have to keep myself in check, as things are progressing now in my book out. I mean, I was so nervous as my book came out because it's my entire truth. And I didn't know how it would be received. And I know for some it was going to be really hard to see that truth about Scott,
mhm.
right? But ultimately, I couldn't cut it out. I couldn't cut it out. It had to be the entire truth. And because again, I'd be suppressing, right? And my truth will just allow somebody else to have the courage to see theirs. And that's my purpose.
you made a profound statement. When we silence our own voice or act small or insignificant, we reject ourselves. That really resonated with me, and I think it will resonate with a lot of people. I think we often try to fit in. Maybe we try to be polite. We want to avoid hurting anybody else's feelings. But in doing so, we actually can harm ourselves. And you trace this in your life back to an emotional childhood wound. Can you share how rejection and suppression has impacted those around you? Like, so you've talked a little bit about it in your life, but how did that impact maybe how you parented or your role as a wife or a friend or
Yes, yeah, that's a great question. I think that rejection and just wanting to please everyone and hide behind the smile became a disservice because then I had no boundaries, right? I had no boundaries in my relationship. And so creating more boundaries, then maybe Scott then would be like, okay, well, this is not acceptable. So then I got to do something about it. Right.
Mhm.
And so I truly feel having more boundaries is actually a benefit to everyone around you, even having the respect from your children and having those boundaries. And also had that suppression created so much anger in me. So then there's like for my kids, that resentment towards my husband, I would be quick tempered with them, and that was a lot of shame because this is not the mother I want to be. I wouldn't be that loving mother, caring. And then I would see that snap coming off and I'd feel so much guilt, so much guilt. And I was like, oh, and I knew at the time it was because I'm holding so much in, but I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know all these tools, and that's how it shows up. I think it showed up with me not having any boundaries in my marriage and being able to communicate well. I to communicate with conflicts or how to address this. I mean, I did see counselors throughout because my husband would not go, so I'd go and then be like, okay, you go back and have empathy and have this, but there's just so much more, there's just so much more than just empathy. I think he's got to be willing to go seek help as well. And I think when people are dealing with someone that won't seek help and you're constantly trying to be their light, you need to kind of start looking at yourself and start doing your healing because you might fall alongside. You have to kind of protect yourself too in some ways. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. Um, your journey towards healing naturally is going to involve your children. So, what are you doing to help teach your children how to deal with their wounds and how to have good health, mental health?
Yes, well, I had play therapists for them right from the beginning in Alaska that worked alongside with them, but also one a good friend had set up a calming corner in my bedroom. And this calming corner had actually these emotion cards. So each feeling had a picture on it. So, for example, my son, who is 6, couldn't really use his voice to express what was feeling. So we would go in that corner and there was essential oils, a lot of cushions, low lighting, some crayons. We had bought also cards for breathing. Some of them are shaped like a heart or a butterfly, and they'd say breathe in, breathe out. So it was just a place where we can connect. And he would tell me, I check in every day. I check in with both of them every day in that corner because it was just so overwhelming for them. And so it would go through, okay, how are you feeling today? And they would go through the cards and they would put up a feeling. And then there's a tool. So it shows them maybe 10 different things they could use for that feeling. A lot of it was hug a teddy, take deep breaths, draw, journal. There was so we would go through those. A lot of times they would pick hug a teddy. They had those marshmallow kind of teddies and they love that. That seemed to be really comforting for them. And so we would kind of go through that and the breathing. So I actually, once we moved to Arizona, uh, 2 years ago now, I recreated that in my room as well. So we still have that space. We still connect there. I've added more now because now they do breath work with me. We do yoga. They love sound. So I have sound bowls, drums. I have rain shakers. I have tuning forks and all these things. It just calms them, right? It's just a
Yeah.
place to calm as they're getting overwhelming. And also, I bring them to a place to do cold plunging, and in that cold plunge, they guide them with breath work. So what cold plunging does, it gives them that resiliency, right, for all the challenges and a way to release as well. So when I know I feel this anger and that volcano about to erupt in them, I say, okay, we need to go to reconnect mind body, and we go cold plunging, we do the sauna, we do red light therapy, and that's really helped to tune in to listen to their body. Ultimately, actually, during summer break, it was really cute because we went there. It's so hot here in Arizona, so they're like, "Yes, please, let's go cold plunging." and and so we go there, and they're the ones who said, "Let's do a 5-day challenge." So I said, "Okay, let's do that." And it was amazing how they connected with their bodies and saw how it made them feel to go every day and for that 5 day. And it's truly recognizing now. I love how they can, oh, I'm feeling a little off. Like I do need to go there, Mom. Can you take me there? Or Mommy, let's go sit in that corner, and they just need to connect and talk. And my son is working also right now with a therapist. Actually, I met at a women's speak group because I took some public speaking courses, and I met her, and she helps with parent abandonment, like father and mother wounds, and she works with adults. And I knew this is who Matea's probably needed. She was still dealing with a lot of has he what happens a lot with suicide is that there's a lot of shame and guilt, and you feel it's your fault. Well, unfortunately, but my son, who was 6 at the time, feels it was his fault. And and so he's still dealing with a lot of that, and he's still dealing with that day because they were there, the sirens, everything. And so she's working with him somatic. So she's teaching him like the tapping when he's feeling all these emotions to still release it, but in a healthy way. That anger is there to protect him, but how to express it. So again, not to suppress it. So at least I'm finding all these tools. And how I got into it, I got into reading actually more, not the famous books. It was actually of people who came out of darkness. I was really curious, like why didn't I not fall? Because when I look back in the environment I was in for so long, a lot of times when you're with someone that is depressed, you also become depressed, right? And I said, okay, what was it that I was doing differently that I didn't fall? And what others have done too to get out. So I started reading a lot of personal stories of how they got out of this darkness. And there was just this common goal. There was this common theme of, faith, and community, and seeking help, and your environment. Your environment was huge. Scott's environment was so toxic by the end, it wasn't allowing a lot of light in. And so checking in.
Literally and figuratively.
Yes, yes, yes. So I think yeah, that's with my children. That's every day I'm learning something new, and I and trying to address and find resources to whatever they're going through, because it seems it goes in waves. A lot of people say with grief it goes in waves, and I address it as they go, and I try and find the resources that is needed for them. And I'm hoping, actually, my hope now that I love, working with the kids, I see other children hurting, at school, and talking to other children. Ultimately, I'd love a program that's in schools that's teaching these children these tools at a young age. Because if Scott or I learned these tools at a young age, where would be now? I feel my kids will be much better off into the world and see once the challenges keep hitting them.
I think I'm not sure if it's dawned on you, but this work that you're putting in, it takes a lot of, as I mentioned, intentionality, but you're impacting not just, your children, but really your legacy, your children's legacy, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren. I mean, these are the things, these healing, positive things are going to be handed down, and you're really changing the trajectory of your legacy, your kids and their legacy. So I just applaud you for that.
Thank
And
you. Thank you. That means a lot because that is, what I'm trying to do, the generational line. I mean, Scott, he had a lot on his shoulders, both his grandparents had died by suicide, but this was very much a secret in the family. It wasn't talked about, and I don't blame them. I think back now we're more in an era where we're more comfortable to talk about it. It feels safer, and back then there was a lot of shame, so it was not talked about. But he, grew up with that lineage, and I think that's why I'm trying really hard to stop that line. Yeah,
yeah,
generational curse, or yeah.
somebody is reading or listening to this interview right now, and someone's coming to mind for them. Maybe it's a spouse or significant other or family member, friend, coworker. Somebody's coming to mind. It just keeps popping up. What are some of the red flags um, that you would say would indicate somebody probably is struggling with
Mhm.
either depression or addiction? Um, which of these signs would you encourage people to really take seriously that they might be tempted to overlook or minimize?
Yes, oh, that's a good question. Isolation. If I think of Scott, he started not wanting to do so many things with his friends, and go fishing, and those are the things he really liked and enjoyed. He would plan them, but not as often. And I would always encourage him because I know he liked that. So isolation, stop doing the things that he used to love. And the progression of the drinking, because he was always really, he said, okay, never work days, just the weekends. But then it progressed to every day. So that increased. And I had asked him many times to stop drinking. So I would say isolation, the increase of, drug use or alcohol. Um, and those are the big ones I saw with Scott. I think the highs and lows. I saw so many really high and then really lows. They would just change so much. And so I think those were the major signs. His sleeping habits changed. He would feel so tired during the day, but then he wouldn't sleep at night. He'd be up all night. I'd be like, "What are you doing?" I'd hear him in the kitchen. It was like a couple hours, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, "Oh, you were so tired." So sleep changes started happening too, and the moods and yeah, I think those are the big signs. And I actually always tell people now because I feel like with the wife, I tried everything, but I think even a stranger going up and seeing something off, you might feel like, well, I don't know them very well, but I'm telling everybody, even if you notice something, go ask that person how you're truly feeling. If you're sensing it, they're probably that person is probably going to be more like, oh, wow, that person noticed, and they don't know me very well. And they might be able to take on that advice from somebody that is not as close to them. I feel that sometimes the people closest need to outsource people on the outside, to try and come and help, or don't be shy to to address it to somebody that you might not be so close to. I truly feel that it'd be quite impactful to hear it from someone you're not that close to, you
Yeah.
know, and And the more people that you get on board, you're going to need community. You're going to need community to go help that person. You can't do it alone. I felt like I could almost do it alone, like we've got this. We're in our marriage. We'll work on this. We can do this alone. I'm not going to burden everybody else with our marital things. And so we're going to do it alone. I started asking a little bit, his dad and whatnot, but that generation too is like we're gonna get over it, so sometimes they're not might not be the best people, but definitely community, like ask people that are willing to come and help you out as well, for that person, to try and get them to seek help. And I definitely, truly, there's that 988 line for suicide prevention. There's always someone on the other line. And actually, I really feel that there needs to be a separate one for dentistry. I do feel strongly dentists might be more inclined in calling if it's another dentist on the other line. Either it's a retired dentist or, someone that's already gone through a burnout and are coaching dentists. And then you can relate, in that field if you had somebody else on the other line to call.
I'm gonna write that down. That's a great idea.
Mhm.
That's fantastic. Um, you obviously you obviously did see the warning signs and you did try to intervene. And there are others who are stepping up. They're not denying it. They're putting themselves out there for their loved one. And you wrote a powerful quote. Ultimately, the environment and life he chose were up to him, referring to Scott's struggle. For those who have a lot of loved ones that are battling depression, addiction, some people are successful and get through. Others, no matter how hard they try, it's never enough. How would you encourage somebody in that position?
I would encourage them to start uh, doing some healing for themselves, because it's a lot of giving, and it's so painful to see like, for me, it was just like I was like, well, he has so much love, I love him so much. The kids love him, and it's so painful. So I feel like you truly need to start working on yourself as well and taking care of your own mental health, because you can't fall alongside either and spiral into their spiral, and
I
start
think
taking care of yourself.
I think that speaks to the concept of boundaries that you mentioned earlier. Uh, Sometimes people, especially dentists, struggling with boundaries, pouring out but not receiving, and the person walking alongside somebody with depression or addiction, they need those same boundaries. Or like you said earlier, they could get pulled into that too, and it could be a vicious,
And they're
destructive
going to need
cycle.
the support too. They're going to need that community of support for themselves too. Not, and because it's hard to see someone you love fall and not seeking help, seeking what's the resources that are out there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I brought up dentistry. Let's talk a little bit about dentistry,
Yes.
um, and the dental profession. And as a dentist, just like Scott, I love what I do. I truly feel like it was a calling from God to do it. It just matches my skill set, my interests. Um, but there's a dark side to the profession, and I have some statistics that you quote in your book. You pointed out that the ADA, and actually I looked up other sources, not that I doubted you, but I just wanted to see what other people were saying, and it was all consistent. So the ADA and other sources reported that 54% of dentists suffer from moderate to severe depression, and that's heartbreaking. And
Mhm.
68% of them, you said, are 39 years or younger. And
Mhm.
what I mean, this I'm 50. I turned 50 this year, and life was a little more chaotic at 39 with young kids, a growing practice. Uh, you're learning the ropes. I joke a lot with my wife. We're gonna have it all figured out about the time we retire, or about the time the kids all leave. That's when we get it all figured out,
Yeah.
right? But 68% of them 39 or younger. And if that wasn't shocking enough, the ADA reports that female dentists have a suicide rate of 5.28%. And that may not sound like a lot, but I think the national average is about 0.42%. So female dentists come in ranking number 4 in the highest suicide rate, and male dentists 8.02%. That's just shocking. And
Mhm.
they occupy the number 1 spot for suicide. So 2 out of the 4 highest rates of suicide are dentists. Um, that's shocking and almost angering to an
Mhm.
extent as a dentist as well. Um, do you hear much discussion? I know it's becoming more common.
Mhm.
Uh, are you seeing enough discussion about mental health in dentistry? Or do you still think we're in a little bit of denial? We want to say we love this profession. Great. We just love it. We love it. Do you
Mhm.
think that maybe we're still actually in denial though?
Yes, I think we're still tiptoeing around it because I even tried to look when I was going to write my chapter. I tried to look for podcasting, YouTube things, and not, they're kind of tiptoeing. They'll mention burnout, but not so much suicide and then the why, and because uh, and and I don't, and I'm because yeah, it's hard to see that truth maybe for those people. But ever since my husband died, I've had a lot of dentists share their story or close call, and either there was divine intervention, and that did not happen. They didn't die by suicide, but they shared their story. And I've actually what encouraged me to write this chapter as well is a dentist. It says you have to write about the dark side of dentistry because it gives them a voice and awareness. And actually, what I also love what it has done is that it brings patience and awareness. And so I've had many patients going, "Wow, I'm going to be nicer to my dentist." Like I'm afraid of but I didn't realize how that impacted my dentist when I keep saying, "I hate seeing you." I don't like coming here. Even if it is jokingly, but you kind of take that on, right? And you take on that their fear and their anger, and you almost feel guilty, and it's not like, oh, everyone's so excited to see you, but we do important work, you're and so I think I love that it's addressing that for patients, but also allowing dentists to not feel alone. A lot of them, I know so many dentists that feel stuck. They do not love dentistry anymore, but this is what they have studied. And now they're like, well, I don't have anything else to fall back on, is
And
kind of how
millions of
they feel.
dollars of debt.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And a lot of people, oh, they make all this money. But nowadays, I saw what it is to own a practice. I mean, it's expensive, and you come right, you're kind of floating there to just keep it afloat, and pay all your staff. And it's really tough unless you're working, that's all you're doing. But then you have no energy for anything else once you get home from work, right?
Yeah, the
And
tank is empty.
yeah, it's empty. It's empty. And your family is not going to want you empty. And what's the point? You're trying to provide for your family and a beautiful life, but if you're not present, then that's not what they want either, So you
Yeah.
have to kind of learn to balance. And your why are you wanting that big office, or why, is it because you're putting your worth in that title or the money, you're trying to reach that goal? You have to be really careful as to your why and your purpose. And if you're living your truth, if you no longer love dentistry and you feel stuck, there is options. You can go into teaching and speaking, and there are options,
Yeah.
as hard as that is. But I have so many that say, well, okay, I have 10 more years and then I can retire. Then I'll be happy. Well, 10 more years of doing something that you feel stuck in, and that's going to affect you, mentally and physically. Mm.
You talk about burnout, and after reading your book and reading these statistics, I think most of these are dentists, maybe they are burned out, but they might also be experiencing moderate to severe depression.
Mhm.
That's more of a reality.
Yeah.
And now read about, when I think about all the times that I heard about burnout and read about burnout, I think that we're probably really just softening it, and we're probably talking about a lot of mental illness and it feels like we have stuck our head in the sand, and I'm not really sure why. So I want to ask you, what is it do you think that drives us to kind of ignore an obvious problem? Statistically speaking, the statistics just do not lie. And it's
Mhm.
not like it's just 2023. I mean, this has been before I even became a dentist. It's been a long-standing statistic. And why do you think that is? Because, it's easy for some people to say they want to poo-poo therapy or getting help, things like that. But when you have an 8% suicide rate, um, there's obviously something going on. What is it? A bootstrap mentality? Is it fear? Pride? What do you think is contributing to dentists? It's just this.
The egos, I think. Yeah, ego definitely comes into part. Your dentist is, yeah, and successful. You have it all, so you don't want to lose that. And so I think it's hard to talk about the dark side and seeking help. And I think in schools, they don't talk about it much because they're like, well, you're in school. They want to make it, this is going to be a fantastic career. You go out there, maybe you'll, have a great lifestyle.
Yep.
So they don't really address the effects of mental health once you get out there. And I think that's where it needs to start. And also you get out of school. And I mean, it's very expensive to go to dental school nowadays. And just that pressure alone. I know when we'd have new associates start and they were students, you don't get a really good paycheck for, gosh, maybe 6 months to, yeah. And so Scott would always loan them, give them a loan, but not every dentist, will do that and or have that option. So it's really stressful for them right out of school, and they feel
Yeah.
that pressure to work all those days and be very productive. And I think they don't talk about it because they feel ashamed, stuck. I think the word is just stuck, and they've worked so hard to become a dentist and study. And so I think that's a lot what but I feel the more we talk about it, more dentists are going to come and say, yes, okay, I also feel that. And I do feel stuck and I don't know where to go. I don't know, like they don't know how to get out of it. They've got their practice, they have all these bills, um, how are they going to pay their house and everything else? So they do feel completely stuck as far as where to go next. But having a community, there's definitely some communities out there for dentistry that are starting to have these WhatsApp, these check-ins. And so I do love that. I know a lot of people started doing that after Scott had passed, Dr. Aman, he says, when he's teaching his group of students, he checks in with them. That's like the first questions he asks, to just dive right in. And he knows there's a need for that. So there's some dentists out there that I've now I've gotten to know they're addressing this issue, but we need more. We need more. So this is why I love that you wanted to do this interview and start talking about it more because it's not on Spotify, YouTube. It's not a lot of talk about suicide and dentistry. And you know what's the strangest thing? When I was starting to date Scott, and I was living in British Columbia, I had my last dental appointment in Vancouver with my dentist, and he said, he's looking at my teeth and everything, and then he says, you know what, dentists are all weird, and we're number one for suicide. And he had told me that at a very young age, but all I thought was not Scott. Scott was such a joyful, happy, and I was like, I could never see that in him. But obviously, there's a heaviness, there's a dark side in dentistry that needs to be changed. Either it's going to be community group practices. You just can't do it alone. Or, yeah.
Yeah, I think since Scott's death, in my various circles, I've heard of at least two other suicides. I mean,
Mhm.
it's something that, yeah, we all need to be a part of the solution. I loved your section on recommendations for dental schools. I hope somebody gets a hold of that. And I think it's
Mhm.
very powerful. Even aside from suicide, if we have up to over half of our profession is suffering from moderate to severe depression, uh, we're not really taking care of each other. Again, it just seems to be reflective of this kind of sickness, like we're going to take care of everybody else,
Yes.
whether they appreciate it or not. We're going to take care of family. We're going to take care of our staff. We're going to take care of our patients. We're just going to give, 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 and we got to find some ways to be able to uh, meet these needs and feed into each other and learn to receive it as well.
Yes, yes, I think that's so important. And now with different professions are kind of high with suicide. I've talked to police officers and firefighters as well, and what programs they're starting to incorporate is these little rooms where there's cold plunging and breath work and all these. And if that was maybe introduce, knowing those tools, because you're taking that on. Think of therapists as well. They're taking on, when you're in someone's mouth, you're so close in proximity, and if feeding that fear, and so you got to find ways to release all that and not take it all your patients' fear. And they need to be teaching that in school and give them those tools.
Yeah. As I have been reading your book this summer and just processing a lot of this, I had kind of an aha moment. And I came to the conclusion that dentistry is the most personal profession that I can think of. You have, obviously, there's other medical professionals that are in various personal areas of the body. Nobody that's in your face.
Mhm.
You know,
Yes.
I'm in your personal space and you're in mine and I'm in your face. Uh, it's there's there's all sorts of factors. There's an artistry to it that's very obvious to you if it
Mhm.
doesn't go well. There's a very real functionality that needs to take place as a result of my work. There's so many aspects that need to occur properly in order for it to work right. And a lot of what we do is bonding, and we're bonding in the most unhospitable environment, warm and wet, and with tongues moving and cheeks. Uh, no wonder it's a little
Yeah.
stressful. And so I think when you go into this situation, and as things come and go, maybe you're I know dentists, most dentists I know all go and try to do the absolute best job they can. They try to bring their A game every single day, and we will fixate on, as you know, fractions of millimeters. And if something
Mhm.
just isn't quite right, you could even have a patient tell you, "No, this is great, this is beautiful." But if you're not happy with it, you will fixate on it. You will
Mhm.
go to bed at night and you'll be thinking, "Oh, it should have been 0.5 millimeters further this way, or it should have been a half a shade whiter, or it should have been whatever, fill in the blank." And so take that, all of that, in
Mhm.
addition to maybe what we carry with us in. Maybe it's
Mhm.
a trauma. Maybe it's a tough marriage.
Mhm. Yes.
Maybe you have trouble with parenting, or on the business side, nothing to do with what we're actually doing with our hands. And it's it just people have no idea. It's a lot. And then to do all of what we do in a very personal way in so many facets, it's all of a sudden it's not surprising.
Yes, it's all compounding, right? It just kind of builds up and builds up, and I think it just creates a lot of internal pain and depression. And so many dentists I know have fused their necks and their back surgeries, and yeah, it's just they're not looking forward to going to work anymore because of the everything else around. And it is a close proximity, and I do believe in some sort of, um, finding that balance is really hard for dentists. Yeah.
So I know what a day in the life of Scott probably looked like, because it's very similar to many dentists, 30 to maybe 50 patients a day. And I
Mhm.
know Scott, being in Alaska, he had a lot of patients. Access to care, I think, was probably not as easy as it is here.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's 30 to 50 times where you're bringing in the smiles. You're
Yeah.
hearing the stories, the joys, the complaints, the stress, the energy,
Mhm.
um, and you're on. It's showtime all day long. You have several staff members that you're doing this for as well. Are you okay? Are you happy? They're bringing in their junk, so to speak, the stuff that you're dealing with, and you want to care for them. You
Mhm.
feel responsible. You're not only providing a paycheck, but you want to provide a place for them to thrive and grow as well. Um, and then there's the manual labor aspect of it, where you're helping, whether it's a filling or an emergency, or just an exam. You're helping, you're serving, you're helping, you're serving, and you do that for several hours a day. And throughout the day, you hear those phrases. I didn't even say it, and you already said it. You know, I hate you, right? Or,
Yeah.
you know, I hate coming here. You know,
Mhm.
I hate the dentist. I hear that from everyone. And for a while, I took it on as a challenge. I'm going to change their mind. And a
Mhm.
lot of times you do. And sometimes you just say, you know what, just roll with it. It's part of the game. But there are other times when you're like, I got a lot going on in my life. And I
Mhm.
showed up here, despite the fact that I had a sick kid. Maybe I had a fight with a relative, or um, I got bills to pay, whatever the situation. My back is killing me, like you said. I'm taking 10 ibuprofen a day. But I came here and I showed up for you, and you just told me that you hate me. And maybe it's the third time I've heard it today. You know, this is common. It doesn't matter how good of a dentist you are. Everybody I know, and I mean every dentist I know, hears it.
Yes.
How do you think that some of those patient attitudes contributed to Scott's challenges with mental health? And what would you say to dentists who are hearing that? What advice can you give them to say to try to stay positive and to try to achieve good mental health in spite of some of those circumstances? Unfortunately, I don't think it's getting better than it used to be, but
Yes.
we're still
Yes.
going to hear some of that. What would you
Yes,
say?
I think with Scott too, even when patients would cry or, there's an entitlement or screaming. And so he would take that on quite a bit, and like you said, try his hardest to make them feel at ease and spend more time with them. But then it was very discouraging for him sometimes because they still were angry or still not happy. And even though he was just showing up on the weekends or coming in for emergencies or giving it for free, and they're still yelling at him. So it was just very discouraging at times. And so it definitely took a toll on him. And I think, when you're working with patients just like that and you're taking on so much of them, it's almost like you have to create this barrier for you, for yourself. You kind of have to be able to not take that on. But that would take a
Boundaries.
lot of practice. Yeah, that would take a lot of practice, or a way to release it. So you almost have to spend some time yourself in some healing to release, to just let that go because you're taking all that on and it's just all so much. So I think it just became really overwhelming for him by the end. I know with COVID too, he would go in just for the emergencies, and that was really stressful. Everyone's, scared, but he was always trying to be the superhero, calm everybody down, and so I think he felt that he could take that on. He could take all that on and it wouldn't affect him. I think I think over time dentists think, oh, well, it's not really affecting me. You kind of suppress it. You kind of
Yep.
don't believe that it's going to affect you. You're like, I'm fine with it. It doesn't bother me. A lot of people are fearful, but it is. It is impacting you just a little bit here and there every time. And it'll be a progression of time, maybe a year or two of that. You start seeing signs, your body will start to speak,
Yeah.
you know,
Let's
and
talk
so,
about that a little bit more. Well, I do want to just highlight, I love the aspect of boundaries again coming up,
mhm,
uh, saying that's them. I don't have to take that on as my identity. And I
mhm,
love that. I think that that would be profound advice. I can come and I can bring my best and I can serve you, but I don't have to take on the baggage that you're carrying.
mhm,
And I can do good work and I can be proud of it. Because there are many people that are so appreciative.
mhm.
Um, and you just need to fill your cup up with those people and that feedback and just really hold yourself accountable to what you're letting in and
Yes,
say, I'm
yes.
responsible. I am the gatekeeper
Mhm,
to my mind, to my heart, And so yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yes, yeah, the gatekeeper. That's good. I like that because you have to be so careful and have the boundaries as well with your own patients. Yeah.
Let's talk about the physical.
Mhm.
Um, and we touched on the emotional toll, but as you know, dentistry is surprisingly physical.
Mhm.
Scott had debilitating back pain, as unfortunately many colleagues do. Um, if it's not back pain or pain, it's uh, some sort of musculoskeletal disorder. I know dentists, including myself, that have had to have PT, massage therapy, neuromuscular work, or myofascial work, um, chiropractic work, and some even fusing of the back and the neck. I know of. How are physical and mental health? How are these things connected? So there's the physical health, and
Well, this
can
is
you touch on
my
that?
belief, my observation and my belief. And from a lot of the books, I'm not a doctor, I'm not, all this, but from my belief and what I see, I think that compiling of that negativity that you're just taking on for everybody starts showing up. They say stress, it shows up as inflammation. It'll start causing you those back pains, the hip pains, the neck pains. And if you're not releasing it, it's just going to build up. So I think that's all part of it as well. That's what I truly believe is that it not only is because of the work that they're doing, but it's also what their energy is bringing in, and the stress. If it's not released, it's going to start giving you a lot of pain. And I know for Scott, not dealing with his childhood wounds and just keep suppressing, that was starting to attack his back, and causing him a lot of inflammation. And so being able to address and those things would be, and seeking help and with a therapist and there is PT, but maybe not working as many days, but that's hard because you see all the bills and whatnot. But this is what are you going to choose, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to choose?
There's a great book called The Body Keeps Score.
Oh,
And
yes, that one.
I think I, like so many people, just get too busy and we just ibuprofen, or I'll just go to the chiropractor and get worked out. But even, the chiropractor would tell you there's deeper issues here. Maybe you need to stretch. But there's even deeper issues, as you're saying, and there's deeper things that are causing us to, and I know I'll give you a chance to talk about this in a minute too, but we're not we're so tense that and inflamed that we're not even breathing properly, and it's compounding one thing on top of another. And so I really appreciate how you bring both the physical and the emotional together and how they impact each other.
Yes.
All right, well, as we're talking about depression, suppression, and suicidal ideation, it would be remiss if we didn't really give some good practical advice. So um, for someone that is listening or reading this, and maybe they are the ones that are struggling, they are realizing that something is wrong, and they say, maybe I am struggling with some depression, maybe I am drinking too much, very common one. Um, Whatever it is, fill in the blank. I'm using something to numb myself so that I can deal with life. Where should they start?
We'll start with the national hotline is 988, but also just pick up the phone and tell someone, anyone. The first thing is seeing your truth. Say, I need help. Just to say out loud or write it out, but tell one person, at least one person that is willing to accept your truth and can hold that space for you, then that'll open that door. Maybe like, well, can I help you find that resource of, professional help? There is definitely different uh, drug abuse places, centers that they can take them on. There's definitely different avenues. I have a few doctors that own ketamine clinics that help with depression nowadays. There's a multitude of resources out there, and there's a lot of people wanting them to help. But ultimately, the first step is willingness to see their truth and asking for help. You stop isolating and hiding your truth. That would be the number one step. And from then on, then having the courage to just pray for that strength. Because a lot of people are just overwhelmed. They're tired. They're ready to give up, and I would say pray. The more you pray and allow God in, more light will come in, light will prevail. And the more you dwell on the shame and the guilt and look what I've done with my life or everything, that's going to bring more darkness. Focus on just praying more and allowing God in to open these doors for you, because he will. I've seen it. I've seen his work. I've seen it for myself. So I would say now, it's actually, you want to get productive and really fast. And actually, once I moved to Alaska, to Arizona, and could start really healing, I actually needed a lot of space. So I kept saying I need space, not isolation, space to heal, stillness, to look within, like meditation. I started waking up 5 a.m. Because that's the only time I could get that space, with the two kids and whatnot. So it was just that quiet space. So I started meditating. I started doing breath work. And that space allowed me to reconnect with me. What's my truth and my heart? And what am I feeling? Am I feeling some anger today? Am I feeling some sadness? And allow it to feel. So often we keep ourselves so busy with our jobs, our kids, our friends, and we don't allow ourselves to truly reconnect with ourselves, and we don't have the space to see our truth. And the same thing with alcohol. You'll just keep numbing because it's so scary to see what your pain, and you feel like you don't have your strength. But I always tell them, no, you do. And if you don't feel like you do, God will give you that strength, because I do not know how I made it from the day my husband died and I found him to when we moved to Arizona. I do not know how I found that strength. Well, I do know God gave me that strength, but I physically couldn't. I don't know. I was like superhuman at this point. But I look back and there's definitely God was present all along, and he gave me signs. He opened doors. The more I let go and I committed to my practice of stillness and meditation and calm, I can hear his guidance.
Yeah.
I can hear where to go. And so I always want to leave people with hope, that in that midst where it seems so clouded over, there's no more hope and it's overwhelming and they don't know what to do anymore. Well, they don't have to do it alone. That's the thing. You're going to need community, because a lot of times when they're in that space, they've isolated themselves from the people that I've talked to. They have no longer any friends. They have never shared their truth with anyone, but now they've shared that with me. So I asked God, what role do I have in that? But ultimately, it was just to listen. Sometimes you just need to be there for someone and listen to them. If someone's telling them they're not okay, dig deeper. Listen, actively listen. Don't listen and think of something else you're going to say. Just listen, let them talk. Because as they talk, they're going to kind of see a little bit more clear. Because I've noticed that when people are typing their truth to me, all of a sudden they reread it, they're like, oh my goodness, wow. They start seeing it, they're just seeing it themselves just because they're putting it out there. So I think that's there's always hope, there's always light. We got to allow that light in. So the first step is opening up that first door and asking for help, and telling someone you're not okay. Mm.
That's amazing. Uh, just I don't want to jump ahead. Um, what would you say? There's a person, another person. Maybe they're not to that place yet of realization or accepting,
Mm.
but they are at least seeing some signs. Maybe they're minimizing. They're trying to soft pedal it. They're not quite to that realization. What would you say to that person who's kind of skirting around reality?
Skirting around reality. I mean, I did that. It was so hard because it was scary to see the truth. Uh, I I would say, I guess for me, not to be scared of it, but that's easy for when they're not ready. It's hard. They're kind of in that cycle. They're not ready. And in time, but at least, if they read, like say, they read my book, that'll just nudge them a little bit, like a little nudge. And then maybe later on, when they're a bit more ready, maybe something will happen. They're like, oh, okay, I need to do, I need to go do something. I think it's just planting that initial seed, but that they'll get them thinking that they need to dig deeper and seek some help. I think it's just bring more of that awareness. The more you talk, the more you uh, do your own research. Maybe listen, I listen to so many podcasts of people who have survived and have gone through depression and just listen to their stories. There's a lot of people there sharing their stories too, and that provides a lot of hope. Mm.
Um, we talked about Scott's involvement in the American Academy of Clear Aligners, and you talk about it in the book. And that supportive community really gave him a lot of encouragement. I think you said it was kind of like a bump,
Yeah.
and that. And do you think that having uh, that sense of community, and I think you touched on it, just having people, the presence of people, do you think that's probably one of the most overlooked aspects of staying mentally healthy is community?
Yes, community, but the depth of your community, the depth, you gotta have the depth, that where you can really be yourself and talk and share your truth. Having community. I saw a big shift. Scott was kind of really low because I think it was the beginning, first 2 years of his lawsuit. And then he finally met, everyone at AACA, and that gave him that boost. He loved dentistry again. He loved going to work. Like he was quite a bit of a down. So I was really excited for him. I'm really happy to have met this group. But yes, having that community and having check-ins, I don't remember there's a book. Anyway, somebody talks about telling your friend, hey, I just need 8 minutes, 8 minutes of your time, and then you get on the phone right away with your friend. That could be your code word. You just got to have your community, your friends that you can really count on.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be where I am without community. Even when I moved here in Arizona, the community that I live in here, they're so supportive, and I lean on that. I lean on that. This gives me the fire. I keep going and sharing my story because they're lifting me up, and same with Scott. That community really did lift him up, and
Mhm.
he really loved all of you, and he really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I just wish I think he shared some of his truth with some, his battles, but maybe just the battles of the lawsuit and his father, but not his own, you know, his real battles inside. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, we started off talking about hope,
Mhm.
um, just like the your book did. And so as we are kind of wrapping up, I kind of want to end with hope as well.
Yes.
There's always, the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. And so I want to discuss a few tools for maintaining good mental health, maybe maintaining that hope and joy for those who have journeyed through the darkest parts. Um, and even if somebody listening is in the darkest part, that they can at least hear that there's something on the other side, that the journey is worth it. Uh,
Yes.
you shared a beautiful story. It almost makes me choke up just thinking about it, but you shared a beautiful story of when you and Mateus and Sophia were coming home uh, after Scott passed. And just hearing about what your friends and your family did. And the word that came to mind, I already said it, but is just presence.
Mm.
They didn't ask, they just showed up. They came and they cooked. Your house was clean. They had signs. The children just came in and hugged and loved on your children. Um, I believe that, there's probably people that didn't even say anything, but just their presence ministered to you in more ways than you can probably count.
Yes.
Speak to the importance of presence, both to someone who has received it, and now understands it and the value of that value in supporting others struggling with mental health. Can you speak to just that presence you felt and what it meant for your member?
Yes, yeah, they keep showing up. Like, be present for them, show that you see them and you're here for them, and just keep showing up. If they're not asking, it's going to be hard for any of them to ask for help. Like for me, I didn't know what to ask. People would ask me all the time, and I
Mm,
couldn't voice it. But that presence, yes, that was gave us hope. Even my Mateus at one point, those little emotion cards I was talking about, it was always sadness or anger. But one day, we're in Alaska and he puts up joy. And I was like, oh, wow, that I was like, why are you feeling joy? Because he was seeing the meals that people
mhm,
are giving us. We've had donations too. We had clean. So that brought him joy because there was such a presence, because he was really worried how we were going to be doing without dad. There was a lot of questions like, what's going to happen now? And so that presence right there is everything. So keep showing up for them, show them that you see them and you're here for them, and you love them, and provide just little things. Yeah, little things to show that you care. Like the meals, it's even the little text messages, the cards. I kept it all, even having all the AACA group, um, yeah, just pour so much love. That gave me that hope and that getting back up, and that provided that for my children as well, and our friends and family. They just showed up. They just, I mean, I'm still in awe, and I just love that they've done that for me, and I'm happy now I can provide that for others, because ultimately, for healing too, being of service to someone. Let's say someone is going through a dark time. I always say, a lot of times you'll be attacked, but those are the lessons in life. We've got to conquer that, because there's a lesson to move to that next level. There's something there, that growth that you got to do, and you're that fulfilled, happy life. You kind of had to go through that. Like for me, I've grown so much. That was the deep, dark. It could have taken me down, and I could have never come out of that. But now, of being able to be of service and provide hope to others, I keep saying that to others that are coming out. I said, well, now you're going to leave a rippling effect of hope and light, because you'll be able to share your story now. Whereas, so you'll have to kind of keep that legacy, that's the legacy that you'll leave. There's a lesson there. We don't know why. I mean, I know some people that have lost their children. There's just unbearable pain, just some unbearable pain that you question, and you're angry. Some people get angry at God, but there's these lessons, and God wouldn't, it's like, I feel, we feel like we're not prepared. We don't have that strength, but we do. We're actually stronger than we
yeah,
think. And there is hope. And I feel sometimes that darkness attacks the brightest people, the
mm,
brightest light. Scott was so bright in a sense. Yeah, I see he was smart, but just such a light in every room that he would
yeah,
go in, and the generosity that he gave, and the love, and everyone was so drawn to him. And there was a bigger purpose for him, out of that. There's, and I always think it attacks the people, you know, uh, that have a bigger purpose.
yeah.
Mhm.
Dr. John Townsend wrote a book called People Fuel, and he has a concept of the importance of relational nutrients. And just like we need physical nutrients, we need relational nutrients. And so, um, having that one or two people, obviously more is good, but you need at least one or two people that just see you.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think a lot of us feel so ill-equipped to help, to know what to say, to know what to do. And I love that you just said, just listen. Uh, just someone's presence is affirming.
Mhm.
Just someone's presence is accepting. Like, I'm going
Mhm.
to sit with you in this. I have no idea what to say, but I see you and I'm here with you and I accept you. And all of those things are committed or communicated without even saying a word. And another thing I liked about hearing the story about how people really served you is they just acted. And how many times have we wanted to do something for somebody and we thought, well, should it be flowers? Should I do a card? What would I say? Oh, I'm gonna go do this, and then I'll think about it. Like, sometimes you just need to do it.
Mhm.
Send a send a Walmart gift card, send an Amazon gift card, just send a note. It doesn't even have to be anything, a text.
Yes.
Just act.
Mhm. Yes, I had so many people that I felt awful. Because they didn't know what to say. What do you say? And there's uncomfortable, or they're like, I had someone actually after a year said, "Oh gosh, I've been wanting to message you or reach out. Oh gosh, now it was so late. I didn't know what to say." And other people were saying, "Well, she's so busy, so I didn't want to bother you." I was like, "Oh, just send it. Like if your heart
Yeah.
is saying, I need to do this for that person, then do it, because it'll make quite the impact and being that present for them and knowing that you took the time to do that." I literally, I read. Even because we had a Facebook page at the dental office, I read every single message that was there about Scott. And actually,
Mhm.
still to this day, before it goes away, I want to copy those and make a little book for my kids so they can read all
Yeah.
the beautiful messages about their father. Just taking the time to do those things, even if you don't know them, be a part of it. And now for me too, I've known some people that have reached out and they've also lost a loved one by suicide, and they have young kids. And I said, well, when you're ready, if you want me to, I'd love to create a calming corner for your
Mhm.
kids, because that
Yeah.
was really, so I have, these kits in my closet ready when they're ready for
Oh,
me to
that's
go and
amazing.
do that, just be present, all the little things, that really showed up for me, for my friends, that they did that for me. And like you said, um, a lot of people overthink what you should say, what you should do, and it's
Hmm.
uncomfortable. And you could just say, I don't know what to say or do for you, but I'm here for you and I love you. And that could be as simple as that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, Wrapping up with the relational nutrients, just the physical nutrients. Um, Obviously, breathing, uh, physical health, but also nutritional health is important
Mhm.
for maintaining good health. Do you have anything to mention about that? I think I have a sense
Yes.
that you have
Yes.
some things to share.
Oh, it's constant, work, but it's worth it. Like for me, I have often check-ins. Yes, what I eat. Fitness has always been a big part of me. So I do work out. I make space for that, 5 days a week, but sometimes I listen to my body. Like this morning, I had to do hot yoga. Like I was really stiff. There's a lot of overwhelming, a lot of things moving right now for me, and hot yoga help release, and it's that tension, so that helps a lot. And breath work, so I've been doing a lot of breath work, some meditation as well. That helps me calm my nervous system and build that resiliency as well for
Mm,
the what's piling up, so I make space for new. And so I'm more prepared and more calm. And this is also for me to be a better mom, and as much as we feel guilty sometimes making that space, I'm just a better mom. So I've gone to a couple retreat where I go to a grieving retreat. I've gone 2 or 3 times, and I felt guilty because my kids had separation anxiety and dealt with that, especially my son after my husband died. So I felt really anxious leaving 2, 3 days, even though they were with my mom. But I had to make that space for me too. I had to heal as well. And then I could physically show up better for them,
mhm.
So I would explain that to them. And I know they understand that now. But
Yeah.
it's so important to do that work. As much as we could say, I don't have time. You just start with 10 minutes a day, just even journaling, wake up a little bit. I'm a morning person though, but so I'm the 5 a.m. club, and that's where I find that space. Yes, I do go to bed early, but but it's worth it. I have so much more clarity as to where I need to go next. And I feel calmer. I can handle more challenges when my kids, are overwhelmed because they'll co-regulate with me when they're feeling overwhelmed and they've got still lots of emotions going on with their father, the loss of their father. This will be a lifelong thing, uh, trauma for them. And so I'm better prepared. I'm better prepared for that. So I think
One
it's
of the one
important.
of the things you did not shy away from is alcohol use, prescribed drugs, whether legal or not. Um, a lot of these things are um, really just numbing agents, and I think alcohol specifically, obviously, most people don't have a problem with drinking alcohol, but it can easily be abused. And so I appreciated that in your book because I see that tendency a lot. So maybe it's not a prescription, but it's definitely an avenue.
And actually, I would, because I go to the dental conferences as well with Scott, and I would see it there a lot. It's the big weekends and it's up till 5 a.m. and and so it's very prevalent because it's like, whoa, that big release, stress release. And that's just the way kind of learn to do that. But that's not one, after the 3 days, you go back to work and your family life, and then you're so exhausted,
Reality is still there.
so yeah. So it's alcohol is probably one of the hardest because it's such a social thing, right? I mean, it's not, I quit. I go all to, I did quit for like 8 months after my husband passed, but it's still, I take breaks here and there, and maybe one day I'll be gone altogether out of my life. But just because I have so much more clarity. Um, but I do see it such a culture.
Yeah, yeah. Um, just a couple more questions for you. Um, early in the book, you talked about having this false veneer of the happy, smiling mom and wife, and you've worked on moving towards a more genuine life that I would assume brings a lot of freedom
Yes.
and clarity and life. Um, but do you ever feel that pull back to old thinking, old habits? Uh, do you ever find yourself acting out of fear of what others think or judgment? Do you find some of those old things coming back? And what do you
I
do?
haven't. I've been kind of like, no, like I've worked with my counselor and whatnot, and having the boundaries, it was really hard for me. So she would train me and go through these practices, and so no, I kind of check in with myself. If there are triggers, then I'm like, okay, why is that coming up? What should I do? I need to address it because, I've had the training now, I've done the work, so I just have some awareness when those things do show up.
Yeah.
And no, I dig deep. I mean, now you meet me, I'm gonna go straight and ask you, how's the mental health in your profession? Or how's this? And how you, and I'm all about speaking my truth. And I find that just allows others to do that. No, and now when you see me smile, I'm smiling. If I'm off, I
Mhm.
say I'm off. Or if I'm feeling like, because I'm usually pretty intuitive, and some things I'm in very particular my environment, very particular who I surround myself with and who's around my kids
Yeah.
as well.
So you're
I
very
protect their
intentional,
environment. Yes,
very, very proactive. And
yes,
if anything is coming up on the radar, you just identify it quickly and deal with it and call it
yes,
out for what it is. And that's amazing.
yeah.
That's very encouraging. Um, one common thing that we just can't overlook, a very common thread from chapter one through the very end is through your entire journey is your faith.
Mhm.
Um, this would be a very difficult journey for most people. And for some, it would rock their faith. Maybe it would cause them to quote unquote lose their faith. But for you, it seemed to actually, your experience seemed to actually strengthen your faith in spite of all the pain and the struggle, even harm it in the sense it could potentially bring struggle for your children. But instead of blaming God, you actually you seem to have a stronger faith. Why do you think that is?
Yes, yes, because I saw so many miracles, God's showed me so many miracles along the way that it did strengthen, and I knew I needed more of God and connecting. And actually, through my breath and meditation, that's how I truly connect. That's how I wrote my book. Every night I prayed. I said, "Give me the words that need to be spoken today." It was very much divinely. I would wake up at 3 a.m., and I'd start, writing. And so it grew my faith because I really saw how he worked. And also that happened. I saw that day my husband passed. I saw that God showed up then, because when I laid on that beach and I text my husband, I felt there's something nudged me to do that.
Mm.
And I know God was protecting me all along. There was just too many things along the way that it was just very clear to me that he was guiding me and helping me all along. And yes, for my daughter though, she was angry at God. She was the first year, when we moved here, she was very angry at God because how could she take away her dad? And she was kind of moving away from her faith. And my kids go to a Christian school, and she was really angry, but started kind of coming back once. I think one of our church camp that she went to, that just kind of helped reaffirm, and some of the teachers that she's had, but more of an understanding that God didn't want to take away her dad, but I could see how some people get really upset and they're mad and they're very confused as to why this is all happening to them. And for me, I guess I never, I never got to that point, I guess, because he showed up. I could see those signs. I saw them very clearly right away, and my faith just grew because I know I couldn't do it without God. Actually, ultimately, that's why when I moved here, I was like, I need a faith school, because I'm not going to be able to do this alone with my kids. I need that foundation for them, that I know I could teach that for them here, and I could take them to church and talk about God. But no, they're going to need that foundation. They're spending 8 hours a day at school. They start the day praying, every day. We pray in the courtyard. We do the Pledge of Allegiance. And that starts off the day right, and it's changing that mindset. The first month was very tough for our kids going to school here. Everything's so new. And I think they're doing a project. It was for dads. And my son was really upset in the classroom. And he's like, well, I don't have a dad. Well, the teacher goes, well, no, well, God is your father. You have a father, you still have a father. And that gave him that peace and that calm. So I think having that foundation is that hope.
Yeah.
Right. And I know my husband didn't grow up with any faith, and he was not into that. So I think, but at the end, I prayed for him. I was there by his bedside at the hospital, and I know he saw. I know he was alongside with Jesus and God, and there was a tear that fell. So I know he connected. I know he did, and and for everybody that have shared their stories with me, that close call, there was a divine intervention, and their faith grew as well. Once you
Yeah.
see it, physically see these miracles happen, that's why I'm so much more vocal about it, because I've
Yeah.
seen it. I've
Yeah.
seen these miracles, and it's
Mm.
still to this day they keep happening as I see so many miracles every day, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it gets me so excited because I'm like, it's working. So I always say, keep praying, keep asking, because with the right timing, he will open those doors.
Yeah.
Keep believing, and doors will open. Mhm.
Well, as we close, I want to just share a few some of your powerful thoughts and phrases from your book that I don't really have a place for it, so I would like to just share them with you. There's just a few of them, but a few of your quotes. The lie is that it's safer to wear a mask. Not a real mask. We're not talking COVID, but the false mask. The lie is that it's safer to wear a mask. You're not alone. You're stronger than you think. You said it earlier. The truth is that these traumas can be released, and it is possible. It is possible to live in peace.
Mhm.
That's available to us. And finally, you are seen. And so um, I thank you for a lot of things. I thank you for writing this book. I thank you for on behalf of dentists, I feel like you see us. We talked about kind of the dark side. There's a lot of good things about dentistry, but this was something we needed to pull the blankets back on, I think, and just expose uh, what's really going on, giving a maybe a more holistic picture of
Because
what's
talking about it will just bring a solution.
yeah,
Right? Make dentistry great, for
yes,
everyone, healthier, a great
yes,
profession, right? So
yeah,
let's get those numbers down,
yeah,
and those statistics. And that's what's going to be talking about it,
yeah,
right? We're going to build these solutions.
yeah. Thank you for answering your call to share your story. I know it took a lot of bravery and courage to do it, and I know it wasn't easy. Thank you for spreading a message of hope and healing. And I would like to say, on behalf of Scott's colleagues, thank you for sharing him with us tonight. Thank you for sharing stories. I think I would speak for a lot of people that know him. It's sad, but it's a joy to have known him, and to just be able to have again an interaction with him tonight. In the book of Genesis, Joseph famously says, "What Satan intended for evil, God used for good." And I think that's what you're doing with your message, turning a tragedy into a lifeline for many people. And so, thank you for that. What's next on the horizon for Melissa Sue Methven?
Well, what's next? I know these doors are opening. I think more like share. I'm having my first TV interview for Suicide Awareness Month here in Arizona on Arizona Daily Mix on Wednesday. I'm also flying to New York because my book will be featured on the NASDAQ screen on September
Wow,
9th.
that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
and the timing of it all, because I couldn't pick the date, it was just all divinely timing. And they told me the date September 9th. I said, do you know that September 10th is Suicide Awareness Day? September is Suicide Awareness Month. So I'm like, wow, the timing of that happening. And ultimately, I'm starting off now my breathwork facilitator career as well. I'm still do hygiene, I'm temp here and there, but ultimately being of service is kind of more my calling now. I just love it. I love the impact that breathwork has done in my life, and I'd like to give that gift back. And speaking, I'd love to be able to speak and share my message at dental conferences, bring in that awareness and for the dental community. I'd love to be able to speak at different conferences, but also for anybody, different fields. But I'd like to just keep using my voice and sharing that message and practicing breath work. In the long run, I love working with children. Love, love, love it. I mean, volunteering at my kids' school is my ultimate favorite. So I actually have been working alongside some teachers, trying to create a program that we can integrate in schools now, where we can give these children the tools for life's challenge and reconnecting, because actually there's depression and suicide in teens is very prevalent now. And so I've been in touch with Teen Life here in Arizona, and I'd like to work alongside with them and trying to figure, because I feel it needs to start young. We need to start planting those seeds young. And how we can do that is bring that in schools, because not every child's going to have a parent that's going to be teaching them these very important tools. So how we can integrate it into schools. And so I've been kind of working alongside with some other teachers and trying to create that, and how we can bring that alongside schools, because obviously we know they're overloaded and things like that. So I'm just trying to figure out the logistics and praying on what that might look like. But yeah, so
Well, and
lots to look forward to.
how can people find you?
Oh, they can find me. So my website is melissagratitude.life. And on that, I do provide, I'm going to have a longer list, but I do provide resources. So things, my favorite books that truly help me, resources to counselors. They all through Zoom. nowadays. That's really helped our family. But and then also sessions for breath work. I could do that virtually, in person, or groups. And speaking engagement, they can get hold of me then as well. But I am on social media. So Instagram is Melissa_gratitude, and I'm on Facebook too, Melissa Sue Methven. And then my book, The Truth Behind the Smiles, can be found on Amazon and Audible. Audible should be out any day now.
Sweet.
I recorded it with my own voice, and
Oh, great.
it should be out any day now.
Great. Well, thank you. Please give Sophia and Mateus our love. And thank you again for spending so much time with us tonight.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. This was really, yeah, this was beautiful. And I love being able to share Scott, and that's what I told my kids. I was like, we will keep, because my son's always like, I don't want to forget dad. I said, well, we'll never forget dad. Look, I made this book where on the cover I talk about dad, and I will talk about him every day, even in my book launch. I talk about him, I share about him, and his legacy will live on, and unfortunately he becomes the messenger, so nobody leaves this world like he did. I want everybody to choose to live because he had so much love all around him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, thank you very much. Good to see
Yes,
you.
yes, thank you. Thank you.